Yes, thank you very much, Kira.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good, good. And your sound also was, by the way, was nicely arranged for Zoom, so I think
Oh,
we could hear quite clearly what you're doing and all of that. Um, Very good. A lot to like about your playing for me. First of all, I like your seriousness. You just seem to be a serious person, and it doesn't mean you can't laugh or you can't make jokes, but you have a serious approach to music that is extremely serious, in the sense, right, that Beethoven is always dealing, particularly in a dramatic piece like this, with the big questions and always dealing with extremes of human nature and his own nature. And so I think right from the beginning, you brought a strong atmosphere and the kind of focus that made us who are listening to you focus and follow along with you. This, I think, was very good.
thank you.
Also, you just generally, your musical ideas, I think, are sound and nice phrasing. I liked your tempo, although we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. But I thought it was an ambitious and appropriate uh, effort, and I loved your pedaling at the end, which so many people don't dare do. That one long pedal until the last two chords, and I think you executed it beautifully. I mean, you're proving that it's easily possible to do on the modern piano. It's a little different, perhaps not full pedal, but half pedal, but you're doing it. So that was and many other things too. So it's a strong performance. Now I guess let's just kind of go in order, and I'll point out some things that you could improve or that you could be thinking about. At the beginning, I think you can even more help bring across this sense of mystery,
Yes.
this sense of not to say dread at what's coming. And of course, that famously uh, inappropriate harmony that begins, it's a dominant chord, not the tonic, and even the dominant, it's not the strong dominant in the root position, it's first inversion.
Yeah.
It's searching. And I mean, you get that, but I think that there's still something too confident about the way you begin.
Okay.
And then you play the fast stuff. And by the way, I also loved how you played the ornament. You played it melodically, as Schnabel used to say. Right? An ornament is a fast melody. And so many people don't do that. And I loved how you played the ornament. But then, okay, and then you're too certain, in my opinion, that, okay, here we go. And then that roll is perhaps too fast.
Okay.
When you're groping along in the dark, or you come into a room and it's blind, dead blind, or what's the word, completely dark, and you're looking for the light switch, or you're looking for the step, and you don't want to fall, and you're not certain, you're not, you're hesitant. And so to me, I wonder if you could bring that across right from the beginning. Where am I? What is happening? Why am I here? Am I going to die? However you want to ratchet it up, it's so intense. It's so mysterious. So just try again. Really focusing on that first bar, and then again the C major bar when that comes.
Okay.
Right, anyway, that's for me. That's immediately better because at the beginning you set that stage that I'm lost,
Yeah.
and then you play the one, and then you're even more lost because at least you thought you were in the dominant or you found the D minor, but then you're somewhere completely different. So and now you're able to convey it. Good, good. Now my next point I think would be about your tempo. On the one hand, I love your, as I said, your ambitiousness. I love that you have a courage to really take this allegro alla breve, which of course means in two, right? With a real propulsion, with a real sense of drive, sense of anxiety, not to say paranoia, right? This incredibly nervous energy. And so I'm all in favor of that approach because to me, that's what he wants, I think. However, you also have to be careful not to overshoot. And what happened was that you played in one tempo this, more or less in that tempo. Then, sorry. And then you were forced to play slower.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that's a nasty passage. By the way, we have very little time, so just maybe rethink your fingering.
Oh, okay.
Because I think you're always repeating the same finger on the same note. Maybe I'm wrong, but from what I could see,
Yeah.
in all this business. Well, you can think about that later. But if that's the case, I think you're getting a little tongue twisted. You're getting tied up, and you're getting a little lost,
Okay.
or stuck, I should say. You're getting a little stuck, and you ended up in a tempo once you got to the transition section. The tempo you ended up was not the same tempo that you played, and it should be the same allegro. So just balance your ambition with how well you can handle it technically at a given point in your studies with the piece. And I guess I would say play it as fast as possible, but as long as you can keep one tempo in the allegros section. Okay. Something else I liked, just I'm giving you advice and suggestions, but I don't want to forget to really praise the things that are really going well. And one of the things that is no small feat is you're playing the correct hand distribution.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it seems that every time one hears this piece, one sees it on stage with colleagues and students, people are making up, yet another fictional way of arranging the hands, which are not what Beethoven wrote. And it's good to see that you're playing you're playing what's written, which in this case is a switch, and then later is a cross, and it's just good to see that. It's, you're playing it the right way. That's very good. Second theme. I feel here that your approach is you're doing everything right. There's nothing wrong, but I feel that it's too comfortable. It's as if the theme was not still laced with, I keep coming back to that word, anxiety, incredible anxiousness. You're 10 cups of coffee, and you're everything's trembling, and you're shaking, and you're shaking with fear, you're shaking with anxiety, you're shaking with nerves, and you can't find, you're going from your bedroom to your living room or to the window, and you can't find peace, and you're nervous, and you supply the similes, but it has to be breathless. And to me, can it be more of that? Whatever you feel it is, more of that, and not too comfortable. It's kind of more articulation, more nerves, maybe more breathless in the breath. There is a breath each time, right? each time, right, somehow. Okay, would you try maybe a couple bars before? Maybe from here, somewhere from there. Yeah. That's the idea. Make us all more, less comfortable, more nervous.
Yeah.
That's good. And I think one more thing you can do there is more articulation. In other words, better finger work in the left hand. The left hand is a little too much, for my taste, too smooth. Maybe just a little more life, more nerves, nerve endings exposed. Okay. Another thing that comes up here, which you can apply to other spots, I think, and the rest of you listening to, you can apply to so much of Beethoven. The lifeblood of Beethoven's music, overwhelmingly, is dynamics. Dynamics is kind of what makes Beethoven go, right? More than anyone, more than any composer we know. At least that's my sense. And I think that you're doing the dynamics. I mean, I can't say that but you're not bringing them off to full effect. And a good example is the second theme. One of the things that makes the second theme, or second group, if we use Toby's language, so nerve-wracking is that it stays down. It stays piano. Shh. Piano. You want to, start yelling but you can't. Piano. It's so oppressive. It's so suffocating, right? Emotionally. And then there's always the payoff. He says crescendo and forte. You know where that is. Into there. And so if you could keep a lid on it, really piano, and then more crescendo and more release in the forte. There are other examples, but this is one obvious one that maybe try for us again, right from the theme. And if you can just look at the music closely to make sure you know where the crescendo begins, and nothing until then, and then give it to us. Yes. Let's move on, but that's well done. Similarly, you don't have to try this because we have so little time, but later on. All of these sforzandi left hand arguing with the right hand were a little too polite. A little more combative. I say this way and now I say no the other way, and more of a fight. So quicker attack, maybe even a little more arm, especially in the right hand to balance the left hand. Left hand is in a great register, right hand not so much.
Yeah.
The last phrase of the exposition. If you follow the first ending, which I hope you would play in any situation except the Masterclass, which today was appropriate, but of course in any performance you should play, of course, the first ending and the repeat. Crescendo goes to sforzando, and then he says less. Okay, but if you look at the second ending which you played, there is no diminuendo or even decrescendo. So I'm not sure that you give up so soon. I'm not sure the crescendo doesn't possibly continue through the A into the G. Or, you see what I mean? And maybe continue, or at least don't come down too much. And then the big surprise. Something to think about.
Yeah.
They're marked differently, so maybe there's a difference there. Okay, this was very well done. In the development, I would just say watch your pedaling.
Okay.
Not because it's muddy or anything like that, but stylistically, for me, it's a bit much. It's a little beyond the classical realm. When he wants the crazy long pedal, of course, he marks it for us.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the pedaling shouldn't be that different than Mozart, even though it's Opus 31. It's still a classical texture. And I'll give you the best example of that is right away in the second bar of the Allegro, which would be bar 100. You pedal like this, right? But by doing that, we lose the rest in the left hand, and we lose the staccato.
Oh.
Right? It's actually staccato.
Okay.
So I wonder maybe a quick pedal on the downbeat is fine if you feel you need it, but then release, release. And that lets you have a better contrast for the piano. But I really missed it. Every 4 bars, there's a rest and a staccato, and then every 2 bars, that was missing, I felt, in your approach. Okay, and the same thing in the right hand. The last bar of, you have Henley edition, the last bar of the page, G sharp octave, and then bar 120, D octave, also those are staccato.
Yeah.
So pedal by all means, but pedal short.
Okay.
So we can have a good sound, but we can also have the staccato.
Okay.
Okay, and just to finish, 2 really, maybe most important things about the transition, about the recap. First of all, the last 4 bars before the recap, you played, I think, a double tempo. Please reevaluate that. You're literally playing twice too fast, I think. And then whatever rubato you want to make, but that really caught me off guard because it seemed that you were much too fast. So just rubato is one thing, but I think you were just miscounting.
Okay.
And then the most important comment happens to come here at the end, and then in the recap everything's the same. And that has to do with the way that you render this, what should we call it, cadenza in the recap.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's an incredible moment.
Yeah.
It's so unexpected. I mean, he takes the unexpectedness of the actual beginning of this, and he quadruples it.
Yeah.
With this cadenza. Nobody expects this. And what I wanted to say was, it was maybe a little too fast, a little too casual, but most importantly, you're missing con espressione. Con espressione, he could have written espressivo. That's more or less the same thing. Con espressione seems to me an even bigger deal.
Okay.
With expression. Don't just speak expressively, but with expression. And that's really the most personal marking Beethoven could note. So
Okay.
if I could just, maybe I can try to demonstrate what it might be like. Not yet. But from here, the sound changes where he writes. Would you try, and we have to stop, but maybe just to see if does that make sense? Something so much grander,
Yeah.
incredibly personal and expressive statement. that just comes out of nowhere, and should just everybody should be on the edge of their seat. So,
Okay.
and physically, lots of wrist, right? Lots of wrist and full kettle, which I think you're doing, but really a deep, big sound. I mean, yes, piano, I suppose, but a big singing piano. Okay, just try that for us before we stop. Deeper in the key, deeper. Yes, Kira, that's the idea. That's the idea. I would go really more in that direction. And also, please don't rush. When someone has something really important to say or really personal, you don't interrupt them or you don't rush them and you say, yeah, 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 right? That's not the time to say that. Let them, right? Of course, let them have their say. And so, to the extent that you're channeling Beethoven and communing with Beethoven when you're playing his music, let him speak. And what I mean is, don't rush the rhythm.
Okay. Yeah.
That's better, but still feels to me like you're looking at the clock and well, we are looking because we have to now go to the next person. But that you're too anxious. There is no anxiety at this moment. And just one example of that is that half note. If we just count free, of course, 2, 3, 4, 1. You tend to play 1, 2, 3, 4. You kind of rush through the half note.
Okay.
So I would just make sure that you're, if anything, extra breaths, and if anything, on the back side of the beat.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, this whole sonata is full of so many great moments, but there's surely no greater moment than this phrase and its sister phrase that's coming.
Yeah. Mhm.
So emotionally, the last thing I'll say is that you need to build. It's a 25-minute sonata, but the climax comes in the fifth minute or whatever minute that is. That's really the climax, and there's wonderful things to come, but it doesn't get any better than that. So make sure that you kind of are able to be equal to that moment, really, really big and intense, and at the same time, relaxed and just listening.
Yeah.
So good luck to you, and it's very nice to hear you play, and
Thank you so much.
enjoy the rest of your time at Bard, and hope to hear you again. So
Thank you
thank you
so
very much.
much. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kira. So our next
Now,
performer is Ben. So Ben, please unmute yourself, play a couple notes just to make sure your original sound is on and everything. Okay. 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 I think we're good. So please tell us what you're playing.
I will be playing Chopin's Ballade Number 3.
Bravo, bravo. Very good, Ben. Thank you. I like, first of all, you make an upright piano sound really good,
Thank you.
and that's not easy to do. So, I mean, I was just for a moment taken aback when I saw the upright because, I'm not, usually one doesn't play a master class on an upright, but this is obviously an unusual situation. But the reason I mention it is because, as soon as you started playing, it didn't matter. And somehow you make it sound big and you make it sound warm. And that was impressive. Just the way you kind of make friends with the instrument and show it off to where it doesn't matter that it's an upright. I liked your general facility. And by that, I mean your finger work is fluid, but as importantly, your wrists are free and your arms are involved only as much as necessary. Your shoulders never seem to go up, which is fantastic. You're just well set up and at ease. And this is a piece that should communicate an urbane comfort, a savvy, suave ease of interaction. And yes, it gets worked up, obviously, to quite a big climax, but even that climax is so positive. It's A flat major, and it's joyous, and it's comfortable. And so I think all of those elements of atmosphere and intent and mood, you were able to communicate very naturally and very effectively. So that's a lot that's going well for you and that you're doing well already. What can I suggest to you? Not a lot, but a couple of things that come to mind, and maybe we'll work on some examples. One is for me, maybe the piano isn't partly involved there, but for me, it's generally speaking somewhat overpedaled. Little overpedaled, and I think you're using the Ekir edition, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Which, is probably the best edition available, broadly speaking, today for Chopin. But it's not like, any Chopin edition, it's not without its problems. And for me, one problem area of Ekir is that they seem to conflate every pedal marking from every source, which of course, as you know, is often different. In one source it's here, in one source it's here. Very difficult to know which is correct, or is there a correct one? But Ekir seems to put them all together. So the point is there's more pedals and longer pedals in the Ekir edition than in the Henley or in the Peters or Text or in other, Penderecki edition, another older but still very good edition. So that could be part of it. I'm looking at the Henley myself right now, but I'm not lobbying you to change editions. I think Ekir, if I was starting the piece fresh, I think Ekir is probably the right one. But just that combined with maybe your own approach, everything morphs or melds into another. Every harmony melds into the other. Sometimes it's just a little muddy, but even if it's not muddy, I think it's a bit. It gives the impression a bit sugary, a bit syrupy, or I don't know how much sugar you take in your coffee or in your tea, but maybe no sugar, or maybe 2 sugars, maybe 1. But then everybody's different. But if you put 6, of course that I guess somebody does, but it's unexpected. And I would not to say that you're putting six cubes of a pedal, but it's a little much, in my opinion. Certainly as it comes across here on Zoom. That, however, goes hand in hand with something else, which is that regardless of the pedal, and I mean that, regardless of the pedal, I would love to hear in your playing and in your approach more breathing, more of the rests, the actual literal rests that Chopin so famously, with which he so famously peppers his melodies. Right? One piece after another, we have Chopin, the melody never ends. In a piece like this, or in the first piano concerto, the melody goes for, you could say, well, it's a 60 bar phrase, it's a 80 bar phrase. Sure, I'll buy that. It does seem to just spin and spin. But just like a singer, do you sing a little bit?
Sort of.
Not in a masterclass, maybe, but maybe privately, or maybe you sing in the church choir, maybe you sing in class. The point is that we all sing, for better or for worse. And what's the first rule of singing? I mean, the first fact of singing that's different from piano playing is that we have to breathe. Now, I'd like to think we also have to breathe at the piano, but some of us, forget that, or we try to prove that we don't have to. But seriously, you have to breathe, because if you don't breathe, you run out of air and you have to stop. So Chopin knows that. And so Chopin's cantilenas, his long melodies, always have opportunities for a breath. So even in places, and they're all over the place, where there is a pedal, unmistakable, unambiguous pedal through the rest, or through the whole bar, but you might have a rest or two rests in the right hand that need to be felt, so you might say, well, what's the difference? Well, it doesn't sound like you're regrouping. It doesn't sound like you're taking a new breath. It doesn't, physically, the hand needs to lift. Yum, papa, lam, and so forth. If or it needs to reach the top, 8th note rest, and then it goes back down, or whatever the case may be. So all of that would allow for more three-dimensional kind of experience. Allow for the long phrases are there, and that's fantastic. But for the short phrases that make up the long phrase also to be heard.
Yeah.
So I think those are my two main points. I think I'd like you to play a little, so maybe we can just see how or where some of this might apply. I think just start at the beginning, if you would. Good, that's very nice. I mean, already here, these little snippets, ba-bum, 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 right? They're little utterances, little motifs, little comments. It's not, in this case, it's not that you really don't observe the rest, but even physically, you stay right in the key. You play ba-ba, and maybe you lift, maybe you stop playing, but you're right there. And so the impression is you're doing your best to hide or masquerade, mask the rest. Like the crazy uncle in the attic that you don't want anybody to know about. You don't want anybody to know there's a rest there. I know that's not true, but don't be embarrassed of it. Don't be, don't treat it like a second, to use another analogy, like like a distant cousin, or treat it like your own child, or your own sibling, or your own closest person. Rests are just as important as notes. We know that from Mozart. So yeah, lift the hand, ba-bum, ba-bum, lift it a little bit. So in other words, help us to see the rest as well as to feel it and to breathe it. And by lifting, you will help yourself to feel it. I'm not talking about lifting 2 feet in the air, just a little bit, right? Just a little bit, whatever feels natural. Could you start there? Second phrase. For example, right there in the second bar, isn't this an interruption? Isn't this have you ever done this when you're speaking to someone and you're saying something and you say something you shouldn't have said and you stop yourself like that? You ever done that?
Yeah.
You put your hands on you say, oops. I'm sorry, I should have said that, or at least you're thinking, I hope they didn't hear that. That kind of gesture, that kind of gesture is what's necessary here, I think. Oops. It doesn't actually go on to anything. The left hand is a kind of an interruption. You have to interrupt yourself first, then go on. Would you try right there, again. This particular moment is not a big deal. Okay, I'm only focusing on it because, well, it's the first one that's come up. And I think maybe we can just get this one in a certain way, and maybe that will help the rest. Can you see my hands okay?
Yeah.
Right. Could you just watch, I guess, especially what I'm doing at the end of that second bar of this phrase, right? The end of bar 10. And I don't think I'm doing anything special, but just let's see what that looks like. Well, I didn't play that very well. Let me try again. I mean, right? I'm interrupting myself in that same gesture as I would, oops. It's an abrupt stop. But whereas you are, if I can demonstrate what I see from you, is something like this. You're right there, and maybe you clear the pedal, and you probably do. So it's not that you're overholding it, but that physically it's not, you're not selling that gesture, musical gesture, convincingly, in my opinion. So maybe just try one more time or a couple more times. If you just those 2 bars. Up, time up. Yes, and then all of these. Each time. Yeah, not that there's staccato. There's no staccato, but it's an eighth note and then a rest. So there's a certain lightness. More lightness, more transparency in general in your texture would, I think, really benefit, because the flow and the fluidity and the cantabile and all those good romantic qualities you already have. So, so much of what we do in life and what we do at the piano is, we work on our weaknesses, or we improve, right? I mean, there's no point practicing what you're already doing well, right? I mean, you practice, if you're good at English, and your vocabulary, you study or practice math. Or if you're good at math, vice versa. The same thing, if your legato is beautiful, but your staccato is bad, that's what you practice. And so that's why I'm just kind of focusing on what, because you need these other elements. Let's see, just maybe 1 or 2 more things. Okay, the second theme. This always took me by surprise. Uh, I'll just echo, since we just listened to, I don't know if you did, you may have been warming up, but for everybody else who's here in the class, we were just working on Beethoven. And were you here or not?
Yeah.
Just at that moment. Okay, so remember we're talking about this element of what we expect, what's expected and what's unexpected, and so much of what happens in that piece is unexpected. And to me, that's a similar. I mean, just vaguely similar. Here, we have this grand opening in A flat, and a big cadence. I mean, very strong and clear and definite. Okay, but now everything's been quite clear so far. But now, first of all, rests. Same idea, right? Ta-yum, ta-yum, not ta-yum, ta-yum, ta-yum. I'm not trying to connect that phrase. I'm letting them be, it's a breath, and another, and another, and another. Then you get the longer melody coming. So that's one thing. But then the other point is, to me, this is very, not to say unexpected, but it's neutral. It's a maybe we can say neutral as far as where it's going. Is it going? Is it staying in A flat? We're going to see. I mean, it could be going so many places, right? That what do they call it? Pivot note. C could be, and it ends up taking us to F major, right? So yet another unexpected place. So to me, the fact that you didn't allow for those breaths enough, and then most importantly that you increased the speed, made me a little uncomfortable because I thought, well, of all the places so far in the piece, this is the one where we least know where we're going. So again, harking back to the Beethoven for a moment, when you don't know where you're going is when you slow down. When you don't know where you're going is when you pull over. When you don't know where you're going is when you ask directions. When you don't know where you're going is when you think. And so it just felt too confident and too fast. Like, oh yeah, I know where this is going. But you don't really, at least we don't, who's listening. So I would not increase the speed. And I think you did that every time. What does it come 3 times, depending on how you count? And each time it seemed you got there and you took off. And funnily enough, once you establish the actual theme, you played at a beautiful tempo and you didn't play too fast. At least I don't recall. I think so it was almost like you just had this, I'm just teasing, but like a manic episode, for 4 bars where all of a sudden you kind of go crazy. I mean, I'm just kidding, but all of a sudden, and then you settle down anyway. So what do you really accomplish? Maybe try bar 48, give or take. In other words, somewhere at the end of the previous phrase, and just see if this can be a moment of reflection and not slower, but not faster, and a little bit of lift. And then introduce us to your new friend, or introduce yourself to the new friend, this beautiful new thing. But to be fair, I think we need to go back at least 1 more bar because we can't have it. Go back 3 or 4 bars so we can have a tempo. So we have a reference point. Yes, good. That's immediately more convincing and more logical. Do you have a pedal that extends in Ekir throughout that phrase?
It gives me an option of either doing or
Okay. Well. Either way, fine. You can think about that, and you can try. But either way, the critical structural focal point is that the A flat bass must clear.
Yeah.
The A flat bass must clear, and the C, as I said, becomes it's a pivot note. It's a note that, yes, it's the third of A flat major, but now it's going to end up being, as it happens, the dominant of F major. But we need to have those moments, those two bars of ambiguity, where we don't know where you're going or where he's going. And that's only possible if you follow his pedaling, whichever version, either version, and clear the A flat. Whereas at the moment, you're just pedaling through. So it kind of brings together everything we've been talking about. One more time, please, from the same spot. Okay, Ben, I think we're out of time, so we can leave it there. I don't have anything earth-shattering to say, later on. I mean, I wrote down a couple of spots, but you can extrapolate. There's nothing really cosmic. As I said, your approach overall, I think, is working well. But just see if you can. It's most of what I had to say was along these lines of allowing the music to breathe horizontally. In other words, as the melody goes, as well as allowing the sound to evaporate as we discussed in that spot. So it doesn't just always have a heavy, rich, romantic clouds hanging over. We just have some moments when we could come up for, if you're swimming, come up for air, get resituated and, go back down and explore further underwater. But we need some time to come up. So I hope that those ideas might be helpful. And look at the pedaling carefully and compare with, no matter how good Ekier may be, with Chopin, we owe it to him to compare with at least one other edition. Yeah. Anything we study, but particularly major work like a ballade. So I would suggest you have a Henley edition or a Paderewski handy to consult, just to check, well, this is also authentic. Maybe this way works better, because nobody can possibly have all the correct answers in Chopin. The sources are too mixed up. Okay, well, nicely done. Bravo. Good luck.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so we had a bit of an issue with Tuwana. All day he's been very nervous about waiting for his internet to come back. It never did come back, but he did manage to make a last-minute video. So we're going to present the video. He is here on his phone. He says he can do the lesson over Zoom, but will be on his phone. So Tuwana, are you able to turn your camera on? I just want to see what the situation is like for you.
Okay, let me just check. Hi.
Hi, we can hear you, but we don't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay, so do you have it set up? Because I will play your box, the video you just made, and then Ignat will work with you then. Okay, so just make sure you have your camera set where he can see your hands and everything. So why don't you do that while we present your piece? Okay.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, Tuvana, if you can hear me, I wonder, so far I can just see your face. And I think just to echo what Suzanne is saying, if there's an angle or a way to position it so we could see, that's better. Okay, so you can work on that while we're listening. But yeah, so we can see your hands, at least the middle of the keyboard, where most of the buff is, and maybe we can see your face. So you can work on that while we're listening. Good. Thank you very much. I'm ready to listen whenever it's available.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Giovanna.
Can you hear me?
Now? Okay, good. So now we see you live. Could you try your piano, please?
Can you hear this?
Yeah. Are you using a microphone of some kind?
No, it's just my phone.
Just because actually your voice and the piano seems for me a little too close or a little too loud, but we'll work with it if that's what it is. That's why I asked if there may not be much you can do, but maybe just don't play too loud. Don't speak too loud because somehow it's very, very present. At least in my speakers.
All right.
Joanna, I like your. Sorry we couldn't hear you play live, but next best thing, and I like your. There's a approach and strong rhythm, strong pulse. It's kind of very clear in all three sections, and stylistically, I think you make a lot of good choices in terms of articulation. Although I do wonder about the size of your sound. And for me, you're using, just generally, a bit too much arm. And I would say that your interpretation ends up being perhaps a rather muscular Bach, which maybe is something to think twice about whether that's the approach that works best for music. That's we always have to remember, even if we don't consciously imitate, that it's written for either harpsichord or clavichord. And if it's written for clavichord, it's even weaker instrument than harpsichord. But so when we play Bach on the modern piano, it's just something we need to keep somewhere in mind: the general size, the size of the sound. If we started let's start at the beginning. So with the Sinfonia, I wonder if it has to be that slow, or how strongly do you feel about that? Because grave, yes, grave adagio, but it's in four. It's grave. Grave refers to what used to be called the tempo ordinario, ordinary tempo in 4/4. That's a Baroque concept, right? And so grave slower, of course, than tempo ordinario. But I wonder if it has to be that slow. And I felt that's the one section where I felt a certain lack of maybe propulsion, even though the beat itself was strictly observed. But I just wonder if you would, just even for an experiment, if you would try it perhaps a little more, thinking in 4, not in 8. Yeah, that's, to me, that's a more natural. I would say it's a more natural tempo. Not that there's a correct approach. Exact. Of course, we don't know what it could be, but something like that makes more sense. I also wonder if you would maybe go further in the direction of double dotting. You do just a little bit, but are you familiar with what, and maybe it's worth mentioning just also for the benefit of others who are observing the class, what is the style of this opening? What is, do you know, can you say anything about the style? The specific style of this opening?
It's kind of like intense expressiveness.
Well, you can use any adjectives you want, those are fine. But the specific style is called French overture.
Oh,
It's French, right? And that has specific connotations in terms of not only pulse, but in terms of a certain grandeur of feeling, very grand, majestic opening, and also double dotting and the dotted rhythms in general. So I would maybe, let me just try just to focus on two things. One, the rhythms, the dotting of the rhythms, just to show you a couple of options. And two is I wonder if you can get the drama, and maybe even more drama than you're getting in the character, but with not so much weight of the arms. Because again, there's a limit to how, I think, how muscular Bach, should sound. But dramatic, yes. Excited and grand without being heavy. Something along those lines? See, a lot of drama, but not a lot of, a lot of fat or a lot of body. It's really the energy and the attack and the rhythm that creates that sense of, wow, what a big opening. Give it a shot. I mean, you don't have to copy what I'm doing, it's just a kind of a way to think about it, think about some other things. Okay, I think that's something that you can examine and just find. I still feel you're using, show it here, but it's a little more up. You're using too much. You're using too much arm, I think, and it makes the sound. It's not quite perhaps lean enough in terms of a basic approach to a Bach sound. Now the andante, when we think of its place in this overture style, right? You have the French overture per se, beginning, and then you have really the French overture is supposed to be two parts, and the second part, of course, is the fugue, and the fugues are French overture fugues anyway are typically going to be quick, and you have the quick. But then in between, you have this extra movement or extra section added, which to me is the one that is melodic, the one that is cantabile, the one that is gentle, the one that is personal. The other two are more objective, they're more public, they're more, if you will, almost show off. They're, in other words, they're for public consumption. This one is more private. I just thought that some combination, for me, your tempo was very much on the fast side. I mean, a little too fast, I think. Although we know that in Bach is relative. Your articulation in the left hand was, to me, it's good that you're playing separate. that's what I say. I agree with your choices, but again, does it have to be quite that much weight? So I found your articulation to be something like this. If I remember. And so while for me it's roughly the correct length, but it's too much weight. You could get the same length playing mostly finger, maybe a little wrist, but not using the forearm, and certainly, God forbid, the upper arm, where it's too much. And then the quality of the right hand. I just thought that I was waiting and hoping somewhere here in the Andante to have a cantabile character, and I think it's necessary. And I wonder if you could. I mean, it's not that different from what you're doing, but it's a little slower, it's a little lighter, it's a little gentler, and I'm not pedaling, but I'm able to create, I think, a more gentle, more singing texture with my fingers. And allowing, there is melody. I mean, I think what's really good about your approach is that it's so objective and it's so rhythmic. But this is more than rhythm. It has to be more than rhythm, right? And a little bit there was a feeling of, kind of just the rhythm, as opposed to there's also harmony, right? And that's one thing, but then it reaches even higher, right? And then sequence. The sequence, we have to respond to the sequence by a little phrasing, a little, maybe a little bit different dynamics. So maybe just a little more private, more human, more personal approach would benefit. So with that in mind, maybe just try it a little bit. Okay, I think, Mana, yeah. Let me just ask you something as a thought experiment, as just something to maybe open your mind a little bit to some other options. Could you please play both hands legato? No pedal. Well, I would prefer no pedal or minimal pedal. It's not about a pedal, but with finger legato, both hands. Yes. Okay. Right. Now, between the first way you played and this way, I would prefer this way because you're starting to give us some phrasing and some harmony and kind of more music, more music more music in the music. Now, I'm not actually recommending you play legato. I don't think legato is a Beethoven legato, a Mozart, even a late Mozart legato. That's not what's needed here. But it shouldn't be staccato, and certainly the right hand shouldn't be staccato. So to me, It's in between. And then still, I feel the left hand is too big. Could we just try the left hand for a moment? I'm talking about the difference between this, if I could just show something like this. Maybe I'm exaggerating, I don't mean to, but I do see a lot of up and down in the arm. And instead, good fingers, just finger articulation, and you accompany with the wrist as needed, something like this. Did you try it? Yep, I think that's better. And the right hand, I think my tempo just allows me to breathe a little more. The tempo's part of it. There's something. I don't say your tempo is wrong. How could I say that? I don't know that. I don't say it's wrong, but I'm not convinced because it feels like you're. It feels like you're, beholden to this rhythm, and listen, rhythm is always crucial in Bach, but this is a cantilena. This is a song, and a song cannot be primarily about dum da 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 la 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 la. Percussion can be about that, but singing has to be a little more flexible. And I think the right hand, give yourself a little breathing room, a little rubato with the right hand. Yes, left hand in tempo, right hand slightly not so precise. Okay. Yeah, play a little more. I mean, come on, we need to stop. We're just about out of time, but I'd like to make two final points. I mean, is there a way that you can respond to the sequence? You know what I mean by sequence?
Yes.
Okay, just not sure these days who has how much theory knowledge or terminology. So there is a sequence in bar 13, right? Okay, and then something else. Somehow, I need to, we need to be aware of that. I guess the point about a sequence is you can, I think by definition, you cannot play the steps of the sequence, whether it's two of them or 8 of them. In this case, there's just 2 or 2.5. But you cannot play them the same way. And somehow, so far it sounds, let's just say, as if they sound too much the same. Can you allow them to be varied? The harmony will tell you, will guide you how to vary. There's many different ways. Would you just try, the bar, maybe the bar before? Yeah, good. That's the idea. So just the whole approach is a little, again, it's more personal, it's more human. And my second and final point is about the fuga, which overall was good. But again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, which used to be those big discs, right, that get stuck and playing the same place over and over. I felt it was a bit aggressive, a bit heavy. I like your tempo. I mean, it was very rhythmic, and that's appropriate. But I just wonder, instead of roughly, and forgive me if but roughly instead of this, for me, a little aggressive, maybe just lighter, but with that same rhythm. More fingers and less everything else. Just to try the beginning, and then we'll. Anna, right there. This is the last thing. Come on, this is the last thing I'll say. I promise. But it's just to finish about the spot. When you play the bar 7 and 8 here, bar 7 and 8 of the fugue, you are so far from the key. Okay, staccato. I don't know if it has to be staccato. I think non legato would be fine. If you choose staccato, that's fair. That's a perfectly valid option. But if you are so high above, what ends up happening is every time you have to travel this distance, and of course you're using the whole arm. So instead of this, I'm going to play staccato but close to the key. But you're playing something like this. You're so far that you're having to use much more mass, much more weight, and it ends up, in my opinion, too heavy. Just to try that spot, and we'll call it a day. Just a left hand, just a left hand. Having a little trouble hearing you, so but it looks much better, and that's it usually goes together. It looks much more appropriate, in terms of the general. How big of a slice of bread do you want? You want like a regular slice, I don't know, an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch, or do you want a 4-inch slice? Which I guess you could do it, but it doesn't fit a sandwich, or it doesn't fit a normal what you would get at a there's a kind of appropriate portion. And I think that looks like an appropriate portion to me. So, sorry we've got a couple minutes over, but really nice to hear everybody, all three of you. Wonderful job. And Suzanne, it's great to see you. You're not on my screen right now, but you're there somewhere, I hope. And there you are. And just wonderful to see you again and to reconnect and to be part of this wonderful Bard Academy. So thank you for having me, and
Sure.
everybody else. Glad to see you too, and hope to hear you at another opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much. You can all unmute yourselves. Give him a round of applause. Great. Thank you
very
so
much.
Ignat. Yeah.
Thank you so much.